Hey guys, happy Halloween! And welcome to the Tragedy of Cinema's Twilight Zone Halloween Special Edition episode entitled The Howling Man. This episode is based on the short story by Charles Beaumont.
This mysterious episode follows the journey of David Ellington, a lost and confused traveler who stumbles through the dark corridors of an old hermitage on a dark and stormy night. His life is forever changed as he encounters a man held captive there. Hey, we appreciate all your support, and we hope you enjoy the show.
The prostrate form of Mr. David Ellington, scholar, seeker of truth, and regrettably finder of truth. A man who will shortly arise from his exhaustion to confront a problem that has tormented mankind since the beginning of time. A man who knocked on a door seeking sanctuary and found instead the outer edges of the Twilight Zone.
Hey guys, welcome to the Man episode. I'm your host, Jimbo, and yes, this is the Howling Man episode, and I'm joined by my co-host,
ADZ. Happy Halloween, everybody. We're glad to get this episode up and running.
Right. There hasn't been an episode since we have been doing this podcast on the Twilight Zone quite like this one, where Eric and I have butted heads, had deep conversations, fought. I had him in an arm bar, had him submit, say uncle. But no, this is one of those episodes that can be taken two different ways, where one of us will like it, one of us not so much.
The beauty of the podcast.
Right. So my job is to make sure I change Eric's mind. So we'll see what he says by the time this is all over with. So Eric, let's take away this episode 5 of season 2, The Howling Man.
All right. The haunting episode called The Howling Man. The Twilight Zone, season number 2, episode number 5. It was directed by Douglas Hayes, and it was written by Charles Beaumont, of course. There is featured music by Bernard Herrmann in this particular episode, and the episode itself is based on a short story by Charles Beaumont called The Howling Man. I actually think it had a different working title when it started, and it slips my mind right now. I should have written that down, and it comes back when it comes back to me. Maybe later in the podcast I'll think of it. But the original air date for this particular episode was November the 4th, 1960. And as always, our production cost looks like $45,614.05. And when we adjust that for inflation, a 902% increase, and it's probably going up every day as inflation is soaring these days. We're looking at a figure of $457,000 and some change. So about tenfold again on this episode as far as inflation goes. Jimbo, you got an all-star cast here.
All-star cast, are we ready?
Take it away.
The main character of this episode is David Ellington. He was played by H.M. Wynant. He's best known for Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, where he played Hoskins. Then you have the great actor John Carradine.
Ham himself.
He played Brother Jerome. He was in the Ten Commandments, where he played Aaron, the brother of Moses, which is kind of interesting because he kind of looked like Moses in this episode.
Yeah, definitely.
So perfectly cast for that part. He was also in Grapes of Wrath, and he was also in a movie that we had covered on the podcast before, Stagecoach, where he played Hatfield. You had Robin Hughes as the Howling Man, a.k.a. Satan, or the Devil. He was in Dial M for Murder, where he played Police Sergeant O'Brien.
Is that a Jimmy Stewart movie?
I do believe so. Alfred Hitchcock, I think.
Yeah.
Frederick Ledebure as Brother Christophorus, which I kind of liked him in this episode too, but he was in the movie Moby Dick, where he played Queequeg, or Queequeg. Yeah, Queequeg.
I'm glad you got that one.
And then you had Azelle Poyle as the housekeeper. She is most famous for the Cisco Kid, where she played Matilda and Rose.
So, question, out of all those cast members, who do you think had the most credits? This is an easy one.
Well, I was going to say John Carradine easily.
Yeah, by a lot. 355. The next closest person was 163, and that was H.M. Wynant. So, yeah, these are, when we say all-star cast, these particular actors and actresses.
Let me ask you a question.
Since
We're talking about H.M. Wynant.
Sure.
Do you think acting was over the top in this episode?
I think him and, John Carradine, like, that was the joke. Like, that's why I made that joke earlier. His nickname was Ham, and he actually had it on a license plate on his car.
Right, but I mean,
I think it's just maybe the story. Yes, to answer your question simply, yeah, I think, but
especially like the beginning narration and the ending.
Someone had an interesting observation for H.M. Wynant. Was he playing the Charlton Heston sort of esque role in the Ten Commandments in this particular episode? Was he trying to, portray that alongside John Carradine? I can kind of see that.
Do you think he was intimidated by standing next to John Carradine?
Probably. I mean, who wouldn't? The guy had like a booming baritone voice.
But was all of his credits before this or after this?
I don't know.
Or was he just a young newcomer?
Don't know. I thought he did a pretty good job. But yeah, I think overall the episode is played up more like a theatrical type of episode.
But I mean, especially with him. I mean, it's like he's... Like, especially at the end when he's talking to the housekeeper.
And he breaks the fourth wall and he's talking to the camera.
And at the beginning, I just thought it was a little too much. You know what I mean?
Okay, well, you're already revealing a little bit.
Right, so I'm just going to go ahead and start off with that, just to give you a little taste of what I'm going for here in this episode.
Let me give you the plot. All right, David Ellington recounts a story, one that began just after the end of World War I. He was hiking in Europe when he sought refuge in an abbey during a violent rainstorm. The residence is isolated, and its head, Brother Jerome, tells him he cannot stay. Ellington is ill, however, and during his short stay meets someone who is being kept prisoner and howls constantly throughout the night.
Oh.
Right on cue. Ellington believes that this howling man is being kept there for no good reason, but Brother Jerome tells him of the man's true nature. The decision Ellington makes will haunt him for the rest of his life. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the episode.
I need to write this down real quick before I forget. So go ahead and start talking about the episode.
So we open, traditional opening. Oh, by the way, of tech specs and so forth, this is all the same. This is a 35mm episode. This is not a videotaped episode. And all the specs are the same. I won't bore you with all that technical details again. So we open with a monologue of sorts, where David Ellington is telling us the origin story, and he's standing by a window and it's thunderstorming and lightning outside and raining violently, and he in essence says, "You're not going to believe the story if I told you, blah blah blah." I'm paraphrasing, of course, and he says, "But I'm going to tell you anyway." And then the camera pans out the window into the storm, and then we descend down onto the ground in the wilderness, remote area, an isolated area, and then David Ellington is standing at the door where he's banging on the door, and it's pouring rain, he's ill. In the original short story, I think David Ellington had pneumonia, if I'm correct. I looked to try to buy that short story on Amazon. Dude, they want a lot of money for... It's only like 100 pages, I think. But it's really good. I wonder if
there's a collection of all of his short stories that might be
possibly,
cheaper.
But it was kind of expensive for the Howling Man story itself. Anyway, I digress. So we move from the door, and the door opens, and we meet... Who do we meet, Jimbo?
Christophorus.
Christophorus, who is he looks like a shepherd. Oh, really? He's carrying a shepherd.
They all look like a shepherd.
And we're going to get to that, why they're all carrying shepherd staffs.
Right.
That's in our trivia. So, Ellington is not doing well at all, is he? He's
right. You don't know really what's wrong with him.
And although it was pouring rain outside...
Bone dry, baby.
His clothes are bone dry. Other than his face, which looks like it might be a combination of sweat and water. I don't know, but... he stumbles to this column inside this monastery or whatever, and that's when he first hears the howling.
The howl. So I got a little bit of my trusty Twilight Zone companion book. Every fan of the Twilight Zone should have this. It's by Mark Scott Zickrey. Definitely worth the buy. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the howl and how they came up with it, and then Also, later on this episode, I got a longer episode I'd like to read. So here you go. As an aspect of this show which caused some concern was the howling, which in the end sounded more like a dog than a man. The howling aspects of the things were hard to sell, Hayes recalls. Now, when you mention howling in a story, you hear this crazy howling off in the distance all the time. This man in the cell is howling. That's all right in a story. Very hard to translate to the screen. It's hard to believe that the man who is in the cell would make howling noises. I don't think we ever actually saw him howling. We only heard him.
Right.
Because to see him howling would have been very, very hard to buy.
Yeah.
A visitor to the set at the time was Beaumont's friend, William F. Nolan. I remember how concerned they were about the kind of cries and howlings, how demonic to make them, said Nolan. So they played endless tape recordings of howls to see which howl they liked the best. And they'd all sit around and say, well, that howl is not satanic enough. And that howl is too high. It's almost like a woman. And maybe if we took that howl and this howl, and they said that they just had a big howl session. So one aspect of Beaumont's script that Douglas was sure wouldn't work was the prop that all the brothers and the were supposed to carry, which we'll save that for a little bit. That talks about the shepherd staffs and what was supposed to be used instead, which I can reference that here back in a minute if we need to. So that's a little bit of how they came up with the howls.
Yeah, they were supposed to. I don't have it here in my notes, but I remember they were originally going to use crosses.
Right.
I think in the original short story, the cross was used.
Well, that's what I'll mention now too.
Blowback from.
They were supposed to carry a large wooden cross. I said, Chuck, I'd warn, quote, Chuck, worried about them having the crosses because the minute you do that, you make them some sort of Christian sect, and the minute you do that, you're in danger from all kinds of religious groups who resent the fact that you're using a Christian symbol. So I said, let's find something else, and I substituted the staff for the cross, which he didn't like that either. So he wasn't really keen on either one of them.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, if you're a writer, you want it to be as close to the original story, I would imagine, as possible. But
right.
Yeah, I guess they got a little weirded out that they thought they would get some pushback from some.
Because you don't want to alienate any of your viewers.
Yeah, right. So let's move along in the episode. So. Yeah, and this is really quick, too, because, like, in the original short story, David Ellington doesn't meet Brother Jerome until almost the very end of the story, but because of time, of course, they only had, 22 minutes, they had to speed it up, so he meets Brother Jerome straight away, who's sitting behind a desk, and, yeah, he looks like Moses or Aaron, and he describes how he came to be at the monastery, right?
Yeah, let me ask you this.
He said, all I want is some food and water, and Brother Jerome's like, no, we can't help you out. Basically, shuts it down.
But who, after World War I, is going to be on a walk? I'm going on a walkabout in Germany.
Yeah, again, the short story kind of gives a little bit of a background. David Ellington was from, Boston, and he was from, a well-to-do sort of family, and he was in college age, and he had gone on some escapades in France and Spain, I think, and he was just kind of bored with his life, and he didn't want to go back to work in his family.
So we just get lost?
So, yeah, he ended up on a walkabout throughout Europe. I think it started in Romania or something, and then he ended up in Germany, I think. But
one thing I did like about the episode, which is if you look out the windows, especially when he's talking to Brother Jerome, you see the stream of water sliding down the windows. And I don't know if they had it on a string or something, because it's usually perfectly thing. And then you had the lightning and everything, coming through. I thought that was really well done as part of the special effects. So
we're pretty far, about 5 minutes into the episode when Rod makes his...
He kind of just poofs in there.
I think they even debated about whether he should even do his monologue here. That it just
at
all, just to let the story speak for itself. But he does give a quick, introduction classically, and he pops into the scene. But Ellington's in bad shape, and the monks, if you will, they're like, well, we can't turn him away because he's really in bad physical condition, and he falls down and passes out there on the floor.
Which they say he's in bad physical condition, but. Really? I mean, he's walking around. You let him walk around the castle or the monastery.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen him eat anything. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, they never fed him. But he magically is able to, stand himself up. And do you want to talk about, too, about the camera angles? With
right. So
I don't know if you have that in trivia or not. But,
I do.
Okay.
So to show that Ellington was still disoriented and dizzy, the camera would turn left and then turn right in a different takes to show that he was not healed all the way yet and put the viewer somewhat of a way he was feeling at the time. So if you watch this episode and you got vertigo, it's probably not the episode for you because every time he's on screen and he's walking down the corridors, you'll see the camera tilt right and then the camera tilt left, and you're kind of like, oh, this guy may not be feeling still well, even though it doesn't say what's wrong with him. I don't know if he's dehydrated. If he has an upper inner ear infection, we both had ear problems. You know what I mean? You know how that makes you feel sometimes.
Yeah.
But he stumbles down one of these corridors, and he comes to this man locked in a door, which is
a cell.
Let me ask you a question. If you had the man, supposedly, once we find out who he is, why would you have a window on there?
Well, I mean, it's like a traditional... It looks like a traditional, like, jail cell, almost.
But
why would you have a jail cell in a monastery?
Exactly.
That's another issue.
Then why, at the end of the episode, if he's locked in the room at the end, surely there's windows and stuff in the room.
I don't get what you're... What you mean, just the...
For to escape.
Oh, okay. So what you're saying is if they really wanted to keep him held captive, why would they put a window?
Why would they put
any interaction,
even like that right there where he could interact with people?
Yeah. Well, the one cool thing that I think that they really did well was that Satan or the devil does not look nefarious at all. I mean, even his eyes, like he has very like gentle, like big eyes, and he doesn't look threatening at all. And I thought that aspect was great.
And let me ask you another question. If we're bringing the religious aspect of Satan into this, then basically Satan's tempting him, saying, hey, let me out of here. If you have a window like that, then why didn't he tempt any of the other people that walked by the monastery people? You know what I mean?
Probably because they were the monks.
And they carried the staff?
And they carried the staff maybe, and that they weren't going to be tempted. Because
if you watch this, the interesting thing is he's like, look, Brother Jerome's lying. They've got me locked in here. I didn't do anything wrong. And there's a big, long shepherd staff. That's all that's holding it in place. It's not locked. It's just a shepherd staff.
It's symbolic
on the door.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting here later on when Ellington goes back and talks to Jerome, and he's like, and he's talking to him. He's like, why don't you just reach down here and grab it? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Because he can't.
Exactly.
Because it's the staff of truth, right? And Satan is a liar, so it's symbolic.
Right. But if that's true, we'll get to it in a minute.
Okay. So
how many staffs of truth are there, though? You see Jerome carrying a staff. You see all of them carrying a staff. That is the staff of truth, the one on the door.
Okay.
I don't think there would be more than one staff of truth.
Okay. I don't know. But anyway, like one other thing I wanted to point out was the exchange. The Satan character or whatever, he gives what's his actual name?
Robin Hughes.
Robin Hughes, or the Howling Man, if you will. He gives this explanation of the story that Brother Jerome was jealous because he and his woman or whatever were kissing and happy along the side of the road, and he took all of his anger and he makes up this really convincing story. That's what makes it great, and that he's locked him up in this cell or whatever, and then you almost don't know who to believe, really. Honestly, they do a really good job with this, because then the next scene is Ellington going and really confronting Brother Jerome about why is this man in the cell, and he says, that is no man. I tell you, that is no man. He's telling the truth, but he's not telling the whole truth.
Well, they caught him talking to the man. That's why he got escorted back to Jerome.
Right. And so, but then they have this conversation, and it seems like they're going around and around, and Ellington, at first he says, the man who's howling, and they go, what man? There's no man. And, that happens for a little bit. And he's very, what's the word? Evasive, right? When Ellington's wanting to know what's wrong with this guy. He told me this whole story, and he's trying to confront Brother Jerome, and then it comes out, that great line, I can't quote it, where he gives all those names of the devil, Diabolos, and Satan himself, and then he comes to he levels with him finally after this cat and mouse kind of thing, and then he asks Ellington, you believe me, right? And then Ellington, like, threatens to go to the police. And he's like, wouldn't you go to the police if you heard a story like this? You got a man, you know, I don't know what the laws are here, but I'm pretty sure you can't hold a man against his will kind of situation. But so this scene goes on for
a long time.
Yeah, this is probably the longest scene in the whole episode, maybe, with this discussion between Ellington and Brother Jerome. And he really tries to convince Ellington of the fact that he is actually Satan and that he's locked him up. And I think later there's a discourse.
Let's see, he's going to tell the rest of the truth.
Yeah, in the fact that, you know, everything was peaceful, and he talks about the village and all of that. But Ellington doesn't seem convinced. Ultimately, I think at the end.
He's a hard sell.
Yeah. And then, is there any other...
He tells him, you know, I've heard that howl every hour.
Yeah, he finally
Every
admits.
hour for the last 5 years. I've heard that every hour, 24 hours a day, for 5 years.
Yeah, he finally admits after this little cat and mouse thing that, yeah, I actually do hear the howling. And it's cool how they develop that in the short story, too. Like, it goes on longer than even this scene. But, yeah, he just refuses to acknowledge, Brother Jerome refuses to acknowledge that he hears anything or sees anything, and him and Brother Christophorus try to convince Ellington that it's all in his mind. And because he's so sick and ill and he has fever and everything in the story, he contemplates, he's going back and forth within his mind, like, am I really imagining this? Is this real? And then once he gets well, then, you know, he finally realizes, yeah, this is actual real howling going on, and it's like 2 doors down from me where I'm resting or whatever. But
so let me ask you a question. So do you think that Jerome and the other monks that basically have just come to terms with living with that noise? Like, let's say in your house you have a leaky faucet and you hear the drip at night when you're trying to sleep. After a while, it doesn't bother you anymore because it just becomes second nature. You know, you fall asleep anyway.
Well, consider the alternative, right? It's you either listen to the howl or you let Satan out of his cage or out of his...
If he really is Satan.
And then he runs wild. Well, they believe and know that he's Satan. But Ellington's not convinced at this point yet.
And I wasn't either at this point of the show, right?
Again, this scene in... I don't know what you call the office or study of Brother Jerome is really the bulk of the episode. So this dialogue is... We won't belabor it, but it is long, and it's sort of cyclical, but it's really the meat of the episode. So ultimately, though, Ellington ends up in Brother Christophorus's quarters or whatever, and under his care, and they lock him in that room. And then Ellington... Wait a minute. Is there something that happens in between, though? Does he go back to the cell again?
No, I think he's...
Yeah, I think he does. He goes back, and then he talks
says like, look, he
to
lied
the Howling
to you.
Man again, and he's like... And that's where he says, Jimbo, what you said earlier, well, why don't you just remove the shepherds? And he says, I don't have any time to talk about this. And then even Ellington even asks, well, I'm about to go to the police. And the Howling Man doesn't want anything to do with the police
it'll
either.
Be the death of me.
Yeah, I'll be dead before they get here or whatever. So after he has another brief encounter, Brother Christophorus touches him on his shoulder, and then they retire to his quarters, and he's like, why are you locking the door? And he says, to protect you. And then he has this key ring.
Which, that doesn't make any sense to me either.
With a leather strap that goes around his neck.
That doesn't make any sense to me either. Why would you lock the door to protect you? You have the staff of truth on the door. All these shepherds have the staffs of truth. Why would you have to lock the door? You wouldn't.
Well, maybe some of the story is lost in translation as it went from book form to teleplay, you know? That's my best guess.
But, I mean, do you understand what I'm saying?
No, I get it. But they had to cut out a ton of stuff.
How deep of a sleep did you have to be to have somebody come around your neck, you know what I mean?
Right.
Lift that off of you. And then open an old creaky door, I'm sure. And the old click.
Yeah, and the story, they talk about that too. As he opens the door, he matches the creaking of the door with the howling.
Oh,
so,
okay.
so he opens it a little bit more when he hears the howling.
So, and I thought maybe he would lock Christopherson back in there, like lock it on the outside so Christopherson couldn't come out and get him, you know what I mean? And here you have him, turning the camera angles again so you can tell he's still not feeling well.
Yeah. So here comes the best part. So Ellington comes and he removes
The
staff of truth.
The staff of trap is what it is.
Staff of trap. It's a trap.
Yeah.
And then he emerges. The Howling Man emerges.
Yeah, that didn't make sense to me either.
And he put the...
What was that? The finger poke of doom?
The Darth Vader. What do you call Darth Vader?
The force choke? Yeah, but it's like his shoulder went out of place or something.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
then he falls to the ground. And this is probably the coolest part in the whole episode. So his cold demeanor, though, that is cool about when the Howling Man emerges. He kind of... His whole demeanor changes from a scared, I don't know.
And he's changing clothes as he goes down the corridor.
And his demeanor completely changes, and he strokes his beard. And then this is where we get to the technical details of the episode, where Jimbo, I think you have it written down.
Right, let me write this down. Basically, he's walking down this corridor, and he's changed the makeup scene throughout the thing. He actually, from looking from a normal man to what people perceive as the
depiction of the devil
with the horns and all that. So let me read you this short little excerpt of how they came to do that.
Yeah, then I might have a reply to that as well, to the summary.
Let's see here. For his Twilight Zone script, Beaumont kept the basic story, except for the fact that the young man becomes obsessed with the idea of recapturing the escapee and sending back to the Abbey, which we'll get to. However, he decided to leave no ambiguity as to the identity of the Howling Man. In the scene where the devil escapes, Beaumont wrote in one visual element a cloven hoof that left no doubt as things went. However, this was never used. So basically, he just wanted to see the cloven hoof as he jumps over a wall, and that's all you really saw. So you didn't really know it was him. But director Douglas Hayes explains, in my literal kind of visual sense, I wanted to see him turn into the devil. I felt the audience would feel cheated unless they saw that. And Beaumont didn't want them to see it. He just wanted the expression on Wynant's face as he chased after him and reached up as the man went over a wall. All he wanted was to see the hand touching a cloven hoof just as it went over the wall. When I did the literal translation of showing him visually turn into the devil, Beaumont didn't like that. He liked better the way he had written it, and that was what he wanted to see. But I have a funny feeling as a director. I started as an artist, and I like to see things. If I promise the audience something, if I say there are 3,000 Indians on the other side of the hill, I don't want to see one feather poke up behind a rock. I want to see 3,000 Indians. Mm-hmm. Hayes' literal transformation of Robin Hughes into the devil involved two different approaches. The first occurs as the prisoner steps from the cell. The lighting shifts, and suddenly his face is subtly but dramatically changed. Before, his face had looked benevolent. Now it looks evil. What has occurred, all in one shot with no cuts, is complete makeup change. This was done with George Clement's red-green filter trick, which he had used before on the episode Long Live Walter Jameson, which we covered in Season 1. Mm-hmm. The second approach was much more complicated, Hayes explains. I had seen many transitions, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde or the Wolf Man or something, in which they would suddenly become immobile and the makeup would change and then they would start moving. I don't want to do that, I said. I want to see him moving all the time. The makeup is changing. So, what we did is that we had a long corridor, and from the time that he started the makeup change, I had him walk very fast down the corridor. At the end of the corridor, he turns and is now transformed completely into the devil, and he dissolves into a puff of smoke. I had the camera on a dolly, and we timed it so that we ran at exactly the same speed every single time. Now, between us and him were a series of pillars. He would make the entire walk at full speed, and we would go with him at full speed all the way in every makeup. But when it was cut together, we cut from makeup to makeup, and we were passing as we were passing the pillars, so that in the blur of the foreground pillar, which was only a matter of the most split of a seconds, he would be in the next makeup, and the illusion was that he never stopped moving, and the cameras never stopped moving. It was just zoom. He flashed down the corridor, and he was moving very fast. The makeup was changing. Sad to say, the final makeup achieved is too literal. With his absurdly long nose, pointy ears, and horns, the devil looks more foolish than frightening. The only makeup that strikes a true satanic mood is the first and most subtle change. And I'll just leave that at what it is. So basically, they had him go down that corridor first as normal, then the first make up all the way down, and the second, and then all the way till they got to the end. So they had that whole corridor to play with.
And so the Walter Jameson connection, I think in that episode, like he turned to dust, right?
Right.
Just one footnote as pertains to that in relation to the short story. Satan's transformation before Ellington's eyes did not happen in the source story. In that version, Ellington only learns the truth years later when he sees newspaper photographs of the Howling Man, who has become a Nazi commander invading Poland. So that's a cool little distinction of how they, for TV, I get it. Like, you got to make it, you promise your audience something, you got to deliver. But it does look pretty cheesy in the final, adaptation or whatever he is right before he goes into.
And then he just passes out.
Yeah, he's released from his, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, the force spell. And then Brother Jerome sort of comes and tells Ellington, like, you don't know what you did, buddy. You're going to have to live with this for the rest of your life.
He's like, I'm sorry for you, my son.
Yeah.
You remember this night for your whole life that you let evil out into the world. He's like, I wish I would have believed you. Oh, man.
And then
now we get...
Years later, again, this is a deviation from the story. Ellington has recaptured Satan, and he gives a description, and he's telling the maid, right?
Right.
Like, you don't understand.
So basically, he's telling this story at the beginning is what he's telling this maid. So he's told this whole story to this maid.
Which, by the way, just a little side trivia. This was the first aired episode of the second season that was not written by Rod Serling. So up until this point in season 2, he'd written all those stories except for this one.
Hey, Rod, maybe you should have.
All right. Man. But there is one problem I have. If he is toiled over all of these years, and he's tracked him, and he's hunted Satan, and he's finally got him trapped behind a door, which doesn't have a locking mechanism, by the way, if you really look closely in the little trivia, the goofs.
Right.
And I'm assuming this is like an apartment somewhere.
Right.
And he has him behind the door.
Right.
Why would you leave? Why would you leave for a minute?
Well, because he's getting ready to go gather everything so he can...
I know.
And how is he going to transfer him back to the Abbey?
I don't know. But
he's got this little staff. I mean, it looks like a candy cane, okay, on this door. They had a gigantic one at the beginning of things. But here's my point to this.
And the maid is going to get curious and look like...
Well, not only that, but... if this is, let's say, an apartment, I don't think it's a closet. If this is a bedroom or something...
It looks like there's a chair or something.
Yeah, but I'm saying, is there a window? There has to be a window or something in there, right?
I don't know. It looks like...
Fire safety hazards, right? You know what I'm saying? There has to be.
I guess.
So...
Here, let me read one other piece of trivia that's not related to the actual in the episode. It says a photograph of Buck Houghton, and maybe we can put this up on our Facebook post, the photograph of Buck Houghton standing next to the actor Robin Hughes in the guise of the Horn and Cape Satan graced the cover of Progress Report number 3, printed by the 20th World Science Fiction Convention, which was to be held at the Pick Congress Hotel from August 31st to September 3rd, 1962. So there's a photograph that was taken of the two of them. I'm assuming it was on set or shortly thereafter. That was on a magazine.
Right.
So maybe we could throw that up on the Facebook post so that you guys can see.
Right. Let me a couple other notes before I dive into some stuff. Observations. John Carradine, who played Brother Jerome, later played Professor Alex Stottle in The Twilight Zone, Still Life, The Little People of Killenly Woods, and The Misfortune Cookie in 1986. This episode takes place in 1924 and in 1960. At the end of the housekeeper begins to pull open the closet door. It says a closet. Okay. Before she turns the doorknob, and the door clearly has no doorknob latch mechanism. Yeah, which we've already talked about. So, Eric, here's some my questions and comments. Are you ready?
Yep.
Why the short staff on the door of the closet at the end and not a full staff? Where did he get this baby staff when the monasteries all had
huge
staffs?
He was in a pinch. Maybe he carved it out of the original staff. He made a smaller version.
Oh, really? But if you knew the shepherds, I call them shepherds, the monks had huge staffs. What makes you think a little staff?
Doesn't matter. As long as it's the staff of truth.
And are we really going to think that this man was smart enough to trap Satan after he let him go the first time? Everything you've seen about him was like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? I just can't buy him as a believable character actually having the brains to capture Satan.
Well, I think it's a euphemism. That's what's in my notes. It's a commentary on the Holocaust and Hitler.
We just witnessed Ellington release him, and Brother Jerome leans down like, my son, I'm sorry. You will never forget this day the rest of your life. It's basically your problem now. Mm-hmm. When the maid releases him, is it now become her problem and not Ellington's problem anymore? Question. Because remember, does Ellington come back and say, look, you don't understand what you've done? Basically, it's up to you now to stop him because you have released him on the world now, and it's now your problem, not mine.
Interesting. I would say probably, yeah. She was the last one.
Do you think Ellington left knowingly she would open the door like he did? So that way it's not his problem anymore.
Again, that's why he mysteries left. In the Twilight Zone.
Right. And
like he wanted her to be the fall
do it, so he didn't have to do it anymore.
Oh, okay.
It's her problem to get back to the monastery now, or would she have to take it back to Ellington, and Ellington would have to take it back to the monastery people?
I don't know. It's a good question.
Good question. And my last thought was, Satan's final form looked worse than the 80s plastic Halloween costumes we used to have as kids with the rubber band on the back. You remember those?
The rubber band that always broke?
Cut your circulation off. Yeah. You know, by the end of the first ding dong trick or treat, it was like, hey, it's me and my mask. Look, I'm Superman. Here's my S on my chest. You know, I don't have a mask anymore.
That's the old Jerry Seinfeld.
Right.
Yeah. Fogs up your face. Your face is all hot.
And you're talking.
Yeah. You can't breathe, and the strap just gets tighter and tighter as you go through the night.
So that was just some of my observations of watching the end of this episode. So Eric, let me hear your side of the story.
Don't sound so enthused. No, I just asked the question, I think the answer is yes, but is this a commentary on the Holocaust? Was the devil a euphemism for Hitler and Nazism released onto the world?
Because World War II was shortly...
Right, after World War I, right, it was dubbed the war to end all wars. And so you have the formation of, was it the United Nations? But it was called something else initially. And there was relative peace, right, throughout the world. And it sort of gave way for the rise of Hitler. Like all of the conditions of the world at that time, I don't have time to go into a full, a full historical recounting of all that. But there was a lot of criticism that would be to the fact that, it gave rise to Hitler and his control and the condition of Germany at the time of World War II and how the people all sort of rallied around the Third Reich and they were easily manipulated and they were lied to, along with, the rest of the world, that he was sort of this docile, in the beginning, sort of leader who wanted... on and on we could go, but obviously it didn't turn out, and he is the picture, a euphemism of the devil, and he tried to take over the world as it was back then until World War II. So I think that's a fairly good assessment.
Have you ever noticed that the Twilight Zone does do a lot of stuff centered around World War I and World War II and Hitler in general?
Exactly, because, and we've seen it in these last couple of episodes, it's very
even
upfront,
in some in season 1.
And overtly in... Man in the Bottle episode.
Where he became Hitler.
I think it's because Rod served, and I think Charles Beaumont was also in the military and served in World War II as well. So, I mean, that obviously is in the forefront of their mind, those experiences. And so they wrote about what they knew.
Anytime they can pick on the opposition, they just felt the need that they should and could.
I think so. I mean, right or wrong or indifferent, I think it made for good storytelling. They did a great job at it. I'm not as critical of this episode as you are. It's one of my favorites of season 2 so far. The next episode, which I won't give away, is probably tops for me. And it might be the number 1 episode of the entire series for me.
It is probably the most memorable one of my childhood.
It's great. But we'll get there for that one. But I would give this one a strong 8. And you're in the 5 range?
No, I mean...
It's not scary necessarily. I know it's a Halloween episode, but it is kind of scary.
It's a story.
Yeah.
It's better than... I could probably tie it with the one we just did last episode, because I think the story of the last episode was more captivating to me because of the real world situation that we are facing.
Okay.
I think Wyann's over the top acting in this. It almost made it not believable. You know what I mean? Like the guy that was yelling at the TV repairman last episode, and the kids, and he's like, "Get off my lawns, kids!" Basically, or I'm going to have this cop arrest. You know, you could feel for that guy because you're a cranky old man now. I know, I've seen you in action, but I'm just saying he was more of a believable character than this guy. You know, even telling the story at the beginning, he's like, "Oh, you're not going to believe this." You know what I mean? I just think the guy's acting was better in the last episode.
Okay, so you felt like it was more.
This is probably a 7.5, I'd say. 7,
it was more
7.5.
put on,
right? It was more over the top. Like I couldn't believe this guy. You know what I mean?
That's why I brought up the Charlton Heston aspect of like he was trying to channel his.
Was he trying to outact Carradine?
I could possibly see that.
So that kind of took away. But then again, some of the questions that I brought up, like the little bitty staff on the door, you know, I was like, really? I mean, the Brother Jerome could have given you a big staff to take on your journeys to go find the guy.
Okay.
And then the whole thing at the end with the housekeeper, I think that's I like the ending. I think I'd like to know if I would have loved to seen Ellington come back in the door and be like, "What have you done?" You know, like Brother Jerome. Well, it's your problem now. Basically, you know, you're going to remember this the rest of your life for unleashing basically World War III on everybody now, since World War II is already. You know, I think they even said that. I think that's one of the reasons that he was so detrimental to capturing him again is because World War I was over and World War II was getting ready to begin, from what I can tell from the story.
Yeah.
So this would signify that World War III was getting ready to start, or something worse.
Right.
So yeah, definitely. I mean, it's one of the better ones of the first 5 we've done. You know what I mean? But we've only done 5 episodes of this season. But we will find out where it lands when we do our wrap-up episode for season 2 here in a few short months. And see if Eric still feels strongly about it after watching the rest of season 2 and where it falls.
Change.
Right. So, well, you got anything else before we close this Halloween special out?
No, just Did you want to touch on the depiction of Satan himself? I think a lot of times we get that from Dante's Inferno, and we get those picturesque things as it applies to
a lot of people associate the devil, Satan, as a horned person with the goatee and the long tail and the cloven hooves and the human arms. But if you ever do a study on Satan, he's basically an angel.
Yeah, an angel of light, right?
Right. So it may be one of the most beautiful ones.
Yeah, and the truth about the episode is, though, that he is the father of lies.
Master deceiver.
Yeah, and so they were accurate on that, but, you know, like, I was just curious, because it really didn't say in the notes or in the trivia where, you know, how did they come up with that costume? I think it's just like traditional devil costume with the horns and the pitchfork and the cloven hooves and stuff, and that all comes out of, like, Dante's Inferno, which was, like, what, 1500s, those paintings and stuff.
So, yeah, very interesting take on how they did it. So.
And it was almost comical by the end, like how he described, Charles Beaumont described, or Buck Howden, whichever it was.
Even if you remember in the movie Problem Child, you know, with the kid, you know, he has the devil horns on and all that too. So that's kind of what I felt towards the end of this movie. So, well, there you have it, The Howling Man, Season 2, Episode 5. The next time we meet will be Episode 6. What's the title of Episode 6? The Eye of the Beholder. Can't wait. So with that being said, I think this episode's coming to a close, and that's a wrap.
And cut.
Ancient folks saying, you can catch the devil, but you can't hold him long. Ask Brother Jerome. Ask David Ellington. They know, and they'll go on knowing to the end of their days and beyond in the Twilight Zone.